All right, Mr. Carville, speaking of explaining, your former boss was in Boonesville, Indiana the other day, and this is what he had to say about his wife.
There was a lot of fulminating because Hillary one time late at night when she was exhausted misstated and immediately apologized for it what happened to her in Bosnia in 1995. Did y'all see all that? Oh, they blew it up, and you would have thought, you know, that she'd robbed a bank the way they all carried on about this. And some of them, when they're 60, they'll forget something when they're tired at 11 o'clock at night.
All right. First of all, it was 1996 rather than 95, which is a much different time frame in Bosnia. There was no immediate explanation or apology. It took at least a week. And it didn't happen late at night just once. In fact, the first time we can find was back in December. Let's watch.
We used to say in the White House that if a place was too dangerous, too small, or too poor, send the First Lady. So, you know, we landed in one of those corkscrew landings and ran out because they said there might be sniper fire.
And then 2 months later at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I remember particularly a trip to Bosnia where the welcoming ceremony had to be moved inside because of sniper fire.
And then 3 weeks later, bright and early in the morning.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
And later that same day.
There was no greeting ceremony, and we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
What actually happened was leaving the plane and strolling over to a rather extended greeting ceremony, just contrary to the way Senator Clinton had explained it. James Carville?
Look, I love the man, okay? And he taught me the lesson every time I teach a class on political consulting. He taught me a lesson, and he said, you know, every time that we make it about us, it hurts us. Every time we make it about them, it helps us. And President Clinton broke his first fundamental rule of politics is the voters want an election about them, not us. And I think his wife's advice to him, as I understand it, she told him to shut up on this subject, was probably some pretty good advice. But I think that he understands that, and I hope, that, you know, and I think that Senator Clinton's campaign and President Clinton are going to spend the rest of the time talking about voters and their problems and not talking about... Any time that the history of the Clintons is when they make the election about themselves, they don't do as well. When they make the elections about the voters, they do better.
What about that 3 a.m. phone call if she's exhausted at 11 p.m.?
You know what? I love that man so much, and he gets out there and he defends his wife maybe too much. He just... Yeah.
He's kind of an unguided missile in this campaign, and he's hit her rather than the opponent.
And I had to look at this again today.
Look,
it's funny, but he's become a bit of a self-parody. That's why we're all laughing, and that's the Clinton problem. And they're so casual with the truth, and admittedly small thing. I don't understand how our mind works to think about it. When you go into a combat zone, do you bring Sinbad the comedian in case things get rough? You know, it's funny, but it's also the Clinton problem and the Clinton fatigue issue.
But a bigger issue, perhaps, in terms of substantive issues, is trade. And I want to go back to Ohio when there were revelations that Barack Obama's economic advisor had met with the Canadians and had talked about the North American Free Trade Agreement. Became a very serious issue, widely discussed throughout the campaign. And this is what Senator Clinton said then.
I would ask you to look at this story, substitute my name for Senator Obama's name, and see what you would do with this story. That's what I would ask you to do. Just ask yourself. If some of my advisors had been having private meetings with foreign governments, basically saying, ignore what I'm saying because it's only political rhetoric, I think it raises serious questions.
And in fact, that is now what has happened. This was some of the stories. Bill Clinton voiced support for a controversial Colombia Free Trade Pact that his wife has fiercely opposed, and he accepted $800,000 in speaking fees from a group boosting agreement. The news came just 2 days after Senator Hillary Clinton pushed her chief strategist Mark Penn from his post after he embarrassed the campaign by consulting with Colombian government officials over the trade deal. His company was paid some $300,000. Bob Shrum, does this affect the campaign?
It affects it some, and it raises questions about how strongly she actually feels on the trade issue. But look, Mark Penn's problem was not that he met with the Colombians. I think James may have had the same experience I've had. I mean, when we went into the Gore campaign, the Kerry campaign, we gave up the commercial clients because there was a potential conflict of interest. But his real problem, the original sin, was coming up with a strategy, or no strategy, as James sometimes puts it, that left her as the establishment candidate in a year of change. And what they did was convert her inevitability into improbability. They didn't understand Democratic primaries. I don't think Mark has much experience winning Democratic primaries for Senate, governor, or president. That's why he should have gone.
Well, yeah, James is closer to it than I. It's been a flawed campaign strategically from the beginning, and fundamentally in a changed election, all this stuff is a symbol for the same old politics, and they habitually, by just their method of politics, make it worse. Their activity, their style, whether it's witting or unwitting, is part of their message, and it's part of their problem. It's why Brock, even with all these problems, I think will still be the nominee.
Yeah, look, if you're going to insist that you be called the chief strategist, as Mr. Penn did, the least you could do is come up with a strategy. I mean, but having said that, he is no longer the chief strategist, and that's where he's going. Look, I want to say this very clearly. Senator Clinton was never very much for free trade agreements. During the campaign, I remember, as does everybody in that campaign remember, she was very cool on the idea of NAFTA. President Clinton has always been much more of a free trade than she is. In the White House, everybody that works there, David Gergen included, says that she was always pretty cool on this stuff. He's always been, he pushed for NAFTA. He's been much more of a free trade than she is. That is a difference there. And I remember very clearly from the campaign, because it was maybe the only time that I ever was kind of in a different place on an issue than she was. So there is and anybody there will attest to that fact over a period of time. He's much more of a free trade than she is.
Mary?
But that's not what she said in her book. So this is the worst political pandering. Bill Clinton is right. Mark Penn has not been fired, but he was right. This Colombia FTA that they're politically pandering on, and NAFTA before that, trade is 40% of our growth, 40% of our GDP right now. Colombia we negotiated this thing 506 days ago. We cannot be prosperous in a global economy unless we're engaged in trade. They're going backwards. They're going before Bill Clinton. Right. Bill Clinton did move your party to the center on these future issues. Trade in a global economy is the only way to have prosperity.
But there are two problems here. The first is, whether there's a Republican president or a Democratic president, you're not going to get these trade agreements approved until there's some kind of labor and environmental protections.
But
that's the reality. Mary, let me finish. A lot of Republicans are going to vote against them. A lot of Republicans from these states are going to vote against them. Secondly, I think Hillary Clinton's problem on this is that she was a good soldier in the Clinton administration. Whatever she thought privately, she had people in, she pushed for NAFTA, all of that. I take James's word that she was skeptical about it during the campaign.
Mike Murphy, is John McCain going to go to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio and say, I'm a free trader, we got to push these trade deals?
He's going to be to the right on trade of the Democrats, which he's already paid a political price. Let me finish. John McCain, unlike any time in the Clinton history other than Bill Clinton on trade, well, I'll give him some credit, went to Michigan, told a bunch of Michigan auto workers the truth about that industry and lost the primary. So you can't question McCain's political courage on these issues. The Republican Party is the free trade party, even though it's unpopular at times because it's easy to scapegoat trade. But I think McCain will be courageous on this. He will run on a free trade platform. There is some fairness and equity issues in trade. He'll address that. And I don't speak for the campaign, but I know him well. But, and they're going to pander to the Luddites who say, yeah, let's run a protectionist country, and then we're really going to make a lot of people bitter in small-town America.
When you tell people that their economic problems are psychological, you're a courageous guy. Yeah. You got a courageous guy to go tell people that it's all psychological.
But you know it's far more complicated than that.
Yeah, that takes a lot of political courage.